The True Believer. Thoughts on the Nature of Mass Movements by Eric Hoffer, Part 12. Section 54. Things which are not. One of the rules that emerges from a consideration of the factors that promote self-sacrifice is that we are less ready to die for what we have, or are than for what we wish to have and to be. It is a perplexing and unpleasant truth that when men already have something worth fighting for, they do not feel like fighting. People who live full, worthwhile lives are not usually ready to die for their own interests, nor for their country, nor for a holy cause. Craving, not having, is the mother of a reckless giving of oneself. Things which are not are indeed mightier than things that are. In all ages, men have fought most desperately for beautiful cities yet to be built, and gardens yet to be planted. Satan did not digress to tell all he knew when he said, "All that a man hath will he give for his life." All he hath, yes, but he sooner dies than yield aught of that which he hath not yet. It is strange indeed that those who hug the present and hang on to it with all their might should be the least capable of defending it. And that, on the other hand, those who spurn the present and dust their hands of it should have all its gifts and treasures showered on them unasked. Dreams, visions, and wild hopes are mighty weapons and realistic tools. The practical mindedness of a true leader consists in recognizing the practical value of these tools. Yet, this recognition usually stems from a contempt of the present, which can be traced to a natural ineptitude in practical affairs. The successful businessman is often a failure as a communal leader because his mind is attuned to the things that are, and his heart set on that which can be accomplished in our time. Failure in the management of practical affairs seems to be a qualification for success in the management of public affairs. And it is perhaps fortunate that some proud natures, when suffering defeat in the practical world, do not feel crushed, but are suddenly fired with the apparently absurd conviction that they are eminently competent to direct the fortunes of the community and the nation. Section 55. It is not altogether absurd that people should be ready to die for a button, a flag, a word, an opinion, a myth, and so on. It is, on the contrary, the least reasonable thing to give one's life for something palpably worth having. For surely, one's life is the most real of all things real, and without it, there can be no having of things worth having. Self-sacrifice cannot be a manifestation of tangible self-interest. Even when we are ready to die in order not to get killed, the impulse to fight springs less from self-interest than from intangibles such as tradition, honor, a word, and above all, hope. Where there is no hope, people either run or allow themselves to be killed without a fight. They will hang on to life as in a daze. How else explain the fact that millions of Europeans allowed themselves to be led into annihilation camps and gas chambers, knowing beyond doubt that they were being led to death? It was not the least of Hitler's formidable powers that he knew how to drain his opponents, at least in continental Europe, of all hope. His fanatical conviction that he was building a new order that would last 1,000 years communicated itself both to followers and antagonists. To the former, he gave the feeling that in fighting for the Third Reich, they were in league with eternity, while the latter felt that to struggle against Hitler's new order was to defy inexorable fate. It is of interest that the Jews who submitted to extermination in Hitler's Europe fought recklessly when transferred to Palestine, and though it is said that they fought in Palestine because they had no choice, they had to fight or have their throats cut by the Arabs. It is still true that their daring and reckless readiness for self-sacrifice sprang not from despair but from their fervent preoccupation with the revival of an ancient land and an ancient people. They indeed fought and died for cities yet to be built and gardens yet to be planted. Doctrine 56. The readiness for self-sacrifice is contingent on an imperviousness to the realities of life. He who is free to draw conclusions from his individual experience and observation is not usually hospitable to the idea of martyrdom. For self-sacrifice is an unreasonable act. It cannot be the end product of a process of probing and deliberating. All active mass movements strive, therefore, to interpose a fact-proof screen between the faithful and the realities of the world. They do this by claiming that the ultimate and absolute truth is already embodied in their doctrine, and that there is no truth nor certitude outside it. The facts on which the true believer bases his conclusions must not be derived from his experience or observation, but from Holy Writ. So tenaciously should we cling to the world revealed by the gospel that were I to see all the angels of heaven coming down to me to tell me something different, not only would I not be tempted to doubt a single syllable, but I would shut my eyes and stop my ears, for they would not deserve to be either seen or heard. To rely on the evidence of the senses and of reason is heresy and treason. It is startling to realize how much unbelief is necessary to make belief possible. What we know as blind faith is sustained by innumerable unbeliefs. The fanatical Japanese in Brazil refused to believe for years the evidence of Japan's defeat. The fanatical communist refuses to believe any unfavorable report or evidence about Russia, nor will he be disillusioned by seeing with his own eyes the cruel misery inside the Soviet promised land. It is the true believer's ability to shut his eyes and stop his ears to facts that do not deserve to be either seen or heard, which is the source of his unequaled fortitude and constancy. He cannot be frightened by danger, nor disheartened by obstacles, nor baffled by contradictions, because he denies their existence. Strength of faith, as Bergson pointed out, manifests itself not in moving mountains, but in not seeing mountains to move. And it is the certitude of his infallible doctrine that renders the true believer impervious to the uncertainties, surprises, and the unpleasant realities of the world around him. Thus, the effectiveness of a doctrine should not be judged by its profundity, sublimity, or the validity of the truth it embodies, but by how thoroughly it insulates the individual from himself and the world as it is. What Pascal said of an effective religion is true of any effective doctrine. It must be contrary to nature, to common sense, and to pleasure.